Wish I could last this long. Oh yeah, we're live. Hold on, it's not as funny. Doesn't make it any less true though. That's also my problem. It's fine, man. It doesn't matter. Yeah, you missed. It's all the same, man. It's all the same. What? Am I supposed to start? By the way, we're on normal latency, so like we're a minute behind in the stream. And we are live. Welcome to Live Before Lock. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are here to break down Rams and Bucs in what might just be one of the harder showdown slates we'll see. There's just too many options. But starting it off here, Adam, how are you?
Doing pretty well, and I agree with you about it being a tough slate, but I think it's a fun one because at least it's two teams that like have good offensive players, as opposed to like a couple of weeks ago, I thought the Patriots and Ravens game was tough because I didn't want to roster six people. And I think there was another game with like the Bears and Vikings maybe where I just like did not want six players in my lineup. So at least we don't have that problem this week.
Right. Like if, there are a lot of guys you could roster on the Jets. None of them are going to make it feel any good.
Right. Like,
and then there's like three wide receivers on the Bucs that are like all pro level wide receivers.
Right. Like I think it was the Ravens Patriots game where it was literally just like, okay, well, I'm out of defenses and kickers and I still have to pick a couple people.
It's not fun. It's not fun at all. But I'm excited to play this slate. Before we get started, you guys know the drill. There's like 250 and change people in here. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. We've got a ton of it. And subscribe to the channel. That's the big one now. We're shooting for 50K. That's the big push. I think that Laffy is pushing for that 50K so he can stop losing to me and getting likes on the videos. He needed to change. He needed to move the goalpost a bit so that he can be a little bit more successful. I think that's my assumption anyway. But I think it's time that we need to just dive in because we are kicking this one over to EMac and Kyle, like 7:15, 7:20, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we don't have a ton of time. We did start a little bit earlier, thanks to Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass. Not that it's a problem at all. And shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We'll touch on some props as we go, but let's start it off here. Captains, MVPs. I assume you're looking more at captains. Are you playing on FanDuel today?
Yeah, actually, thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome, I guess. Let's just start here. We'll talk from a GPP perspective. Who do you like the most at captain? Who do you like the most at MVP?
So I'm not playing tournament. Well, I'm not playing tournaments anywhere, but haven't really looked at tournaments for FanDuel. But pulling up the ownership, I think that FanDuel, it looks like potentially Woods a little bit underowned, I think, given the fact that he does have some rushing touchdown equity in addition to whatever he does in the passing game. On DraftKings, I think that captain wise, it looks like, and this is, using Alex's sim results as well, but it looks like maybe a little bit too much ownership going to Jared Goff, maybe not quite enough going to Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin.
Yeah, Godwin, the guy that I'm looking at on DraftKings right now, he popped up quite a bit in my first crunch, and I'm totally cool with it. Kupp and Evans, I'm liking as well. I think Brady and Goff are a little too overowned, so we seem to be on a similar page here. FanDuel, Brady and Goff are making up like 50% of my top MVP rankings. Ownership is sort of in a similar boat, but it looks like Jared Goff is significantly lower. Like I've got Brady relatively neutral, Goff significantly ahead of the projected ownership. So that's kind of exciting. After that, you can pick out of the grab bag of Godwin, Evans, Woods, and Kupp, and I think they're all pretty much the same play on FanDuel at MVP, depending on how much salary you're trying to save. Anybody you don't like at all in either of those spots, guys that you see as like completely overowned?
I don't think so. I mean, the only guy that looks really overowned is Goff, but again, you're still talking about a quarterback, so it's not like that's a bad play. It's just it just means that he personally is overowned, and you'll have to be different somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, I don't on DraftKings. Again, the same thing you're saying. I think that Brady and Goff are slightly too high in ownership, but they're also two of the 4 or 5 best. So I don't think they're like total zeros or anything like that. And then on the FanDuel side, the first guy that I get to that has like sort of a negative ratio for me is Ronald Jones, and I'm already 6 people down on the MVP list, so I'm not super mad about that. From a cash perspective, this is another one where I don't even think that we can just naturally say like this is the cash play at captain on DraftKings. I think that you can get there with quite a few different potential options that are all going to be pretty close to that optimal build out of say Fantasy Cruncher. If you're running our projections raw, there's just a lot of variability at the top.
Yeah, I don't think that there's really one clear-cut guy. And I know you and I were talking some about cash before the show, but there's a lot of lineups that are going to project really similarly. And, you can use really, I think, any of like, depending on who else is in the lineup, but Fournette, Brady, Godwin, Kupp, there's a lot of viable captain options, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I think I'll be looking at Godwin at this point, but, honestly, there's an hour and a half until lock. Who knows what will change at that point in time. If ownership moves around, that will dictate it a little bit. Let's see how many people we got now. Up to 477, 81 likes. You guys know I need that number north of 100 ASAP. That will help me out a lot. Well, I figure we're gonna get like 1,000. And buckle up, guys. EMac's back after this show, so it's gonna be a fun one. Anything you saw doing your builds, going through setting up projections, or anything that caught your eye from either one of these teams? Guys that are sort of slipping through the cracks, or things that you didn't notice that you maybe notice now for either the Rams or the Bucs?
So I think one thing that has been, or I've seen talked about a pretty decent amount, is that Cooper Kupp didn't play that many snaps last week out of the total snaps he could have played. I think that it's always concerning when that happens, at least to some extent, because you would rather your guy be on the field than not be on the field. But I think it's always important to keep in mind whether he played on pass, like was he sitting out on passing downs, or was he just not out there when they were running? Because those are two totally different things. I don't really care if my wide receiver is run blocking or not. And so I do think that one reason that you can still be optimistic about Kupp despite that last week is he played 81% of he played 30 snaps he ran 30 routes. He played 37 snaps. So he ran routes on 81% of his snaps last week. If you go back and look in the previous weeks, it was like 67%, 52%, 69%. So he ran routes on a higher percentage than normal. So I'm not as concerned about the fact that he was sitting snaps out. It's not like, he was running routes 60% of the time and then also not playing snaps. So I think that's at least a positive for him. I'm not overly concerned, but that is something that happened. And then Godwin, I think it's worth noting that in the 2 games he's played with Antonio Brown, one, he's playing with his broken hand or his surgically repaired hand, whatever the case may be. But also you've seen the target percentage be a little bit lower than normal. I don't know which one plays the bigger role there, but 15.8% last game, 16.2% the game before that. For the season, he's averaged 19.5%, and that's including those 2 games. So I think at least some reason for concern on Godwin, but again, not something that I'm going to look into too much, especially when you consider that his salaries come down as well. And, he's a really good receiver. I'm more concerned about Godwin simply because he's playing with all of Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, and, the running backs, competing with all of them for targets. I'm more concerned about that still than his hand.
Okay. Speaking of Cup, and when you started it, got some props from No House Advantage. I'm going to hit you with one. Let me know what you think. Over under 59.5 yards for Cooper Kupp.
59.5 yards for Cooper Kupp. Hang on, let me get that pulled up. I had switched back to something else. We just got the Rams inactives. Nobody
relevant.
Yeah, I don't think so. All right, so what did you say it was for Kupp?
59.5.
Where is it? Oh, there it is. I have him at 64.5.
There you go. We'll give you one more since you mentioned Chris Godwin as well. Chris Godwin, 60.5. So obviously that yard, very important here.
Yeah. I have him at 72.
Okay, there we go. Like that one would probably grade out pretty well for you. For those not familiar with No House Advantage, you're selecting player props. So first you'll pick the prop. In this case, you would pick Chris Godwin's receiving yards prop. After you make the selection, you then have to choose whether or not you think that it's going to go over or under. And then you assign a point value to it. So you have to assign 7 points, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Confidence picks. That amount of yards on a slate like today, that's probably a pretty decent over for you. Or at the very least, one of my top 7.
I had a typo. I'm at 63.3.
Okay. So maybe just a mild over.
Yeah, I had a couple numbers flipped, but yeah, I'm at 63.3.
Well, for the close to 700 people that are in here right now, if you want to play at No House Advantage, you should head over there. They have a $15 GPP, $3,000 guaranteed, $1,500 rather, up top. It's only 42% full. So if you're trying to play any DFS today, I would take a look at getting on No House Advantage because it's looking like we're going to see a little bit of overlay. And anytime that there's overlay, that is going to be a very big benefit to you. There's no reason that you should try to pass up on overlay. It helps you out a ton, should help you build your bankroll. So go to No House Advantage and get yourself signed up. Use that promo code Awesemo too. Get yourself some goodies on the way in. Is there anything else you want to touch on at either the captain spot or the MVP spot? Are you feeling any kickers or defenses, or just one on FanDuel, but either kickers or defenses on DraftKings for this particular game?
I think Suckup's a good play. I wouldn't want to play in the captain though. I mean, it's just so hard to get a kicker captain to work.
You're not projecting Suckup to hit 350 yarders,
and then every other player to do nothing. No.
Yeah, and somehow like a rushing touchdown.
Right.
You don't see that often, do you? That would be sick.
Or rushing touchdowns? No, it's unusual.
Yeah. You'd think it would happen more often.
I feel like when they do score, it's normally a receiving touchdown.
Yeah. I've always liked the holder takes the snap, the toss over the head.
Yeah. But a lot of times it's then it's technically a receiving touchdown.
700 plus people, and I didn't even have to say anything. You got up to 166 likes. Love you guys. That's the best. I don't even have to beg too much, which is always helpful. We're running a bit of a promo right now. I know you guys have heard about it throughout the day. Mayflower. Use the promo code Mayflower. Go to awesemo.com/join. Select the Awesemo Express Weekly Pass for the NFL. You get everything we've got for $1. Projections, ownership, Slack channel, and more only costs you $1. You get it for a week. If you've ever wanted to check out what we've got going on, we're going to have a ton of content coming up for Thanksgiving Day's slate, which I hope still stays at 3 games. Who knows what's happening with the Ravens as of right now. But you can come check out all the content we have. We'll cover you. If you sign up today, you'll still have that access for Sunday as well. So that'll cover a lot of NFL content. Use that promo code Mayflower. Let's transition over to utility and flex, depending on which site you're playing on. Anybody that stands out immediately as an underrepresented value for you?
At utility,
it looks or flex. Either side. If you're looking at FanDuel or DK right now.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Nothing crazy. I mean, I think that naturally, because Goff is a little bit overowned at captain, he's going to be a little bit underowned at flex because again, getting quarterback's obviously valuable, but if he's going to be more popular at captain, he's going to be less popular at flex. So I think both quarterbacks look a little bit underowned to me. Other than that, there's nobody that really stands out as being underowned.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few options. I ran my sims a little earlier. If you saw my Twitter, I posted those as well. Just looking at the DraftKings side to start from a utility standpoint, I prefer a little bit Brady to Goff in the utility spot. I think Chris Godwin actually in utility a little bit overowned. I prefer to get a little bit more shares of him in the captain spot. I'm not trying to avoid him. I think that he can just fit a little bit better from a salary perspective at the captain slot. The area that I really am skipping, though, is the Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown, Tyler Higbee trio. I have those guys quite a bit below their current projected ownership. That's a spot where I'm expecting to have just a total goose egg. And the main reason for that is that I'm going to be getting quite a bit of Leonard Fournette today at 4,400. To me, he's probably the best value of the slate on DraftKings. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I think that Fournette's pricing is really affordable because I think maybe people will shy away a little bit because he disappointed last week. But the thing that you want to keep in mind with the Tampa running backs is that even in the weeks where Fournette was getting more snaps and was seemingly more involved than Jones, he typically was getting, even his carries were typically in like hurry up situations or when they were down and he was on the field anyway because he's been the passing down back. So I don't think there was really ever anything in the last few weeks that suggested Fournette was going to take over the lead rushing role from Ronald Jones. So because of that, I'm not looking at last week and saying like, oh, the script flipped back to Ronald Jones. Like that was just a game where they ran the ball more than they were throwing it and Jones was on the field more. So I think that Fournette should be more expensive than he is, given that he is still, as far as I know, the passing down back. He's still going to get more targets than Ronald Jones you would expect. And of course, full point PPR, that is really valuable at running back. So Fournette stands out as like the top value for me.
Yeah, I'm going to have close to everything that I'm playing today with Leonard Fournette. I'm a big fan here. If we look at other guys that I'm pretty heavily exposed to, clearly the quarterbacks, I think maybe the easiest way to look at this would be Kupp, Evans, Godwin, Woods, Brown, Reynolds, just naming off all these wide receivers here. Are there any that are clearly at the top of your list or clearly at the bottom of all of the sort of main guys? Both teams basically have like 3 legitimate wide receivers.
No, I mean, I think that they're all pretty comparable for me. Like I have Antonio Brown projected a little bit lower than, or in some cases a lot lower than the other guys, but he's also less expensive. And he still has been getting targets. I mean, he had about a 21% target share last week. With Woods, you've seen Josh Reynolds actually really take on a big role for the Rams the last few weeks. I don't know that necessarily continues, but you've seen Woods kind of be more inconsistent in the passing game, but he does get some carries as well that boosts his floor a little bit. He has, at least some rushing touchdown equity, which is nice. All these, it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the show, where I think it's a really difficult slate, not because of a lack of options, but because there's so many guys that for all intents and purposes are like the same play.
It's It's so difficult. I can't think of too many slates that are like this, especially with guys that have a pedigree like this. You just don't see this many names that are
Yeah,
viable.
that's like what makes it so tough because like there are slates where you have a bunch of guys where it's just like I don't know, they're kind of the same play. The range of outcomes is really similar, but normally it's because you're talking about Denzel Mims, Brashad Perrin, and you know whoever else. It's not because you're talking about like legitimately good players.
Right. And that's where it really gets tricky. Like when I look at my like just the color scheme in my sim results, it's just this sea of like yellowish green of guys that are 25% to 35% likely to be in the optimal. There are no extremes really. It's the quarterbacks and then like 15 different people.
Yeah, and it's funny too because so I mean we talked obviously about Fournette and Jones and kind of how you expect their roles to play out. It's a lot more muddied for the Rams. Like not only do you have the receivers on both teams that are more or less interchangeable from a DFS standpoint, but like the Rams running backs, I think there's a decent chance that one of them ends up being a good play. You saw Cam Akers get a lot more opportunities last week than he typically does, but it's not like he played a bunch more snaps. He played 18 snaps. Malcolm Brown played 29 snaps, and Darrell Henderson played 23. The week before that, Akers played 20, Henderson played 18, and Malcolm Brown played 57. But you know, there's no real certainty to what the Rams are going to do at running back. You know, if you've been trying to guess that all season, you've been wrong a lot. I know we already had one slate where Sean McVay had said that it was a primetime slate, and he had said after their previous game that he was going to start getting Cam Akers more involved, and then Cam Akers I think played literally one snap. It was week 6, Cam Akers played one snap, and so we've already had the one primetime slate where it looked like Akers was going to be a good value, and then it was terrible. Right now you only have like 6% ownership going to him on DraftKings at 2,800. So some tournament appeal there, but again, just like a non-existent floor for him.
When we touched on Fournette from a DraftKings perspective, but I think he is equally as good of a play on FanDuel at 8K. I don't really think that there's anybody below him that has the same sort of projection. Like I have Tyler Higbee 3.5 points behind him. He's only $500 cheaper. I don't have anybody below Tyler Higbee that looks like a really nice play to me. I'm not very interested in Gerald Everett at 7K. Is Fournette sort of your floor on FanDuel?
From a salary standpoint, yeah, I'm with you. Like below him, and this isn't. I mean, like if you're playing the Millie Maker or whatever the FanDuel equivalent is, obviously you can play some Gerald Everett, you can play some Cam Akers. But as far as guys that I have any amount of confidence, it's Fournette, and then to some extent Higbee, but I would still much rather have Fournette. Fournette not as valuable on FanDuel since most of his value does come from catching passes, but still, when you compare him to everyone around him in salary, he's the preferred option.
We got Leonard Fournette's prop pulled up here on No House Advantage. I want you to guess what his rushing yard prop is.
So by you asking, I'm assuming that it's not going to be something I expect. I have him at like 36.5 yards. So okay. I'll guess like 50.
Now 30.5. So okay. we're in the ballpark, but that's still, looking like a little bit of an over there. Maybe not the same sort of value you get as for having him the full way. Guys, if you're interested in a giveaway today, I can help you out there. Head to our Twitter account at Awesemo_com. Look for our pinned tweet. We're giving away $250. Can't beat that at all. All you have to do is reply to the tweet with an answer to the question, who's going to have more passing yards tonight, Tom Brady or Jared Goff? Reply to the tweet, follow Awesemo_com, follow at Awesemo NFL. I mean, follow Adam and I as well, at Josh Engleman, at Ship My Money DFS, and then like that tweet. As long as you have your reply in before kickoff or before 8:20 p.m. Eastern time, since nothing ever happens on time, a random person is going to get selected to win 250 bones. Everybody likes money. Get that money.
A couple other FanDuel specific values that I just noticed were Antonio Brown and Josh Reynolds. I think are both like relatively less expensive than the other receivers. On DraftKings, you got them priced up a little bit, but $9K for Brown, $9,500 for Josh Reynolds, I think are pretty affordable on FanDuel.
Yeah, Antonio Brown in particular, one of my favorite plays on FanDuel today. I actually think that he might be, outside of Fournette, the most under-owned flex play of everybody that I have here. Cool. I got my lineups in. I feel pretty good about that. So I'm going to slide on over to my run sheet here to see what else I have to touch on, because we've got about 13 minutes or so before Adam and I have to get out of here. I asked you the question before. Is there anybody on the flex side that you think is wildly over-owned, guys that you don't expect to be getting to?
On the flex side, I don't really think so. I mean, it's weird to say, but it seems like for the most part, ownership is pretty much where you would expect it to be on this slate. And I think probably in part that's because there's like no one play that's jumping out as like a play that I think is great that maybe the field is a little bit lower on. There's not a lot outside of the quarterbacks the quarterbacks I think are under-owned. As far as being over-owned, there's not really a whole lot that I see.
We got 1,000 people in here, 987, 232 likes. You guys are doing fantastic. I love it. So again, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to start grabbing some questions from Premium Slack. I'm going to grab some questions from YouTube chat. We could hit on some questions as we get ready to transition over to the actual Live Before Lock show, because Live Before Lock, it's a very different experience. Jonathan Fantano just sent in a super chat. FanDuel GPP, Gay on a 3-2 build or suck up on a 4-1?
I don't have a preference on the build types, but Gay a little bit lower owned. So all things equal, I would lean towards Gay.
I think that I would feel the same way. Hopefully the ownership is even more off because of the ambiguity in the kicker situation. So I think that, you could probably get to Gay, and I'm guessing Austin McGinnis picks up at least a mild amount of ownership today just from confusion's sake. So I think that helps. See what else we've got. Premium Slack, if you want to get some questions, feel free to drop those in. Let's see what else we've got coming in on the YouTube side. James M says, who's your top MVP on FanDuel? I think Tom Brady is the most frequent MVP. I would say that Jared Goff is my favorite in a larger field GPP scenario.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In like crunching my early cash lineups, it was pretty much all Brady at MVP. So that tells me that he'll probably be higher owned. And you're obviously getting a similar range of outcomes with Goff.
Do you have any Scotty Miller in an MME format? I don't think so.
If I do, it's just like kind of because he randomly got thrown in. I mean, you have his roles basically become non-existent since Antonio Brown came. You still have Tyler Johnson being involved to some extent as well. So, it's if he ends up in a flex spot, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I'm not going to be upset, but I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't have any.
Yeah, he showed up 2.6% of the time in the utility. So if you're playing 150 and you have, anywhere in that 0 to 5 range, I think that's all super reasonable. To me, he's like a super large field play. He's not somebody that I would be trying to get to in any of the smaller field stuff. Let's see what else we have. Premium Slack is just non-existent for guys that have takes upon takes upon takes from the time I wake up in the morning until now. It is largely empty from a questions perspective. Here we go. Jordan G says, Godwin or Brady for captain in double ups? Optimal is what I was using, and it has Godwin.
I think in my top 4 lineups, one has Godwin, one has Brady. Right now I have Cup, but that is subject to change. I do think I like my lineups a little bit better with Godwin than with Brady, just because of how salary works out.
Yeah, I have Godwin right now, but in my top ranked lineups, it's Fournette, Godwin, Brady, Woods. I mean, there's a suck up one there, which is ridiculous. You can get, it's really hard to sort of give anybody a priority because, I can build a lineup with a couple different guys and they're separated by 0.3 of a fantasy point. So I think it's a spot where paying attention to your lineups ownership is a little bit more important because you can build a lot of really comparable fantasy point lineups. Some of those might be quite a bit lighter in ownership. Some of them will be a little bit heavier. And I think that can dictate some decisions for you in a cash game. Are both quarterbacks a lock in cash on FanDuel?
Let me pull that back up.
I would imagine yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would be. I haven't made my FanDuel cash lineup yet, but just kind of looking at my top lineups, they all have Brady and Goff. Yeah.
Okay. DK Construction, more 4-2, 5-1, or 3-3 in your 150. I don't ever look at it.
Yeah, I don't look at it, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't even like add it up to check. What I can do is tell you that in my sim results, the average winning lineup had 3.5 Bucs and 2.5 Rams. So, use that information however you would like.
Yeah, that's just one of those things. Like, I know it gets talked about a lot, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like one of those things that like people go back and look at the winners and try and like almost recreate the process backwards, like to force themselves to have a 5-1 or 4-3 or 4-2 or whatever, instead of just like playing the best lineups they can by other metrics. I don't know. It's not something I look at.
Yeah, like when the game is over and the lineup is like, if you run Fantasy Cruncher to figure out what the optimal was on actuals, it's not paying attention to team other than making sure that there's just one representative of a team in the lineup. Otherwise, team is meaningless at that point.
The idea, I think, is that correlations work out so that, one is preferred, to some extent, but I don't really think that's the case. Like, I think if you're paying attention to correlations and stuff like that, you're probably better off like using the actual correlations than trying to go, 5-1 or 4-2 a certain percent of the time.
Yeah. Like I think that you should be building the lineup, and then whatever that number is what you end up with, not oh, this needs to be 4-2. Now, how do I fit my pieces in together for it?
Right.
Like they happen in the reverse order. What else we got? How much does Van Jefferson show up in the optimal?
In the optimal, 0.
Yeah,
yeah, that's in your sim.
Yeah, I mean the same answer.
Okay, I was gonna say essentially. I was thinking optimal lineups as far as just like by projection. I was just like, yeah, I think anywhere near it. No, actually, he's in one of my top 50 on DraftKings.
It's 1%, and that's if high scoring or high priced guys go bonkers, that's how it happens.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's tough with Van Jefferson right now because Josh Reynolds has just clearly emerged as the guy in that role.
Yeah. A couple more minutes before we get out of here. Let's see how many people we've got. We're up to 1160, 288 likes. Man, we are filling up the coffers of likes before we turn this one over. We're going to be well north of 300. Yesterday, what were your thoughts on yesterday's optimal lineup having no quarterbacks?
Frustrating because my top lineup had Waller. My top lineup for cash had Waller, and my second one had Mahomes, and I was just like, this is stupid. I'm just going to play Mahomes. And then I didn't cash, and the Waller lineup would have.
There you go. Maybe if I was around, I could have gave you those little tidbits you needed in the DM.
Yeah.
Probably not. Kilo Whiskey says, setting a rule to limit Rams running backs to 1. Too aggressive in a DK GPP? I would not set that rule.
I would probably set it to 2. My thinking being that ideally I wouldn't have more than 1, but I also, if I'm playing a bunch of lineups in a showdown tournament, I just don't want to be that restrictive in the lineups that I'm making.
Yeah, and I think the most important piece of that is that Leonard Fournette is not priced in a prohibitive way.
Well, he said Rams.
Did he say Rams?
You said Rams.
Oh, I said Rams. I think the big point of that is that Cam Akers is not priced in a prohibitive way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, I think that there's enough ways that it can play out where Cam Akers scores a touchdown and Malcolm Brown catches 4 or 5 passes or whatever, where, it's not super likely. And again, if I were making one lineup, I wouldn't be looking to have 2 Rams running backs. But if I'm, building 1,000 lineups to choose 150 from, I don't want to kind of artificially restrict that. I don't think. Okay.
John Johnson with the super chat. It's letting us know, 1, that we rock. I agree. Okay. 1, I have no idea what the answer to this question is going to be for you, because you can tell me that you haven't seen either of these movies, but I assume you've seen both of them. Which movie do you prefer, Rudy or Remember the Titans?
I've seen Remember the Titans.
Okay, you haven't seen Rudy?
No.
Okay, I would have thought you were more likely to have seen Rudy than remember the Titans, just given how much it used to just be on television all the time.
No, never seen it.
No?
I'm like 99% sure I have not seen Rudy. I'm 100% sure I've seen Remember the Titans.
Okay. Obviously, I'm sure you know the gist of Rudy.
No? I don't think so.
A guy that sucks at football walks on at Notre Dame and continues to suck at football.
I'll say, yeah, okay.
And then he throws the ring in the volcano or some shit.
Brian Dennehy one?
No. I don't know. Who's Brian Dennehy? Brian Dennehy's the one that played Bobby Knight, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now I want to know what movie Brian Dennehy's in.
Yeah, he's like he's a hobbit or whatever, right?
Wait, I might have the wrong name.
Brian Dennehy played Bobby Knight in A Season on the Brink.
Okay, but there's...
Are you picturing a guy that looks like Bobby Knight or Brian Dennehy?
No, I was saying a name that I think is right that I don't think is right.
I don't know.
Is Rudy sad?
No.
Okay, what's the sad sports movie that like the actor died?
Oh, you're thinking of Brian Piccolo?
Yeah.
So you're thinking of Brian's song?
Yeah.
Okay, different movie altogether. Rudy is total garbage. That's a message that's in our YouTube chat right now. I think Rudy is only a good movie to people that like Notre Dame. That would be my guess.
I have no idea.
2 more minutes to go before we're going to transition out of here. Eric, 5858, asked, what about 2 running backs on FanDuel? Is there anything different to you about having those 2 running backs on FanDuel compared to DraftKings?
Yes. So I still wouldn't set that rule. I just don't, I still wouldn't be getting them a lot. But I do think the math is slightly different because you have 1 less roster spot. So the opportunity cost is going to be higher to using one of them on, a second running back as opposed to like a receiver.
I missed another one? All right. Let me grab it. Phil Mancini, can you play Woods at captain with Rams D, Brady, and no Goff? My answer to these types of questions are almost always yes.
Yeah, like I was gonna say my answer is yes because it's a 1-game slate and weird shit happens all the time. Is that like a pairing that I would be excited about and feel good about? Like absolutely not.
Right. No, it's just like everything just becomes super relative. Then you just have to think about, is Woods beating other wide receivers? Right. Is that enough to get him there?
Like if you're trying to come up with like, how does this possibly work? It's not really that hard. Robert Woods gets a rushing touchdown. The Rams D gets a pick 6. Tom Brady plays from behind and gets, garbage touchdowns at the end. It's easy to explain how it works. It's obviously really unlikely, but everything working out your way is really unlikely. So
I'm well aware of that one. All right, we are at 7:15. We're at 1,260 viewers, 349 likes. I appreciate you guys a lot. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Adam, any final thoughts on this slate before we turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew?
We got one last question in premium Slack. How about Gronkowski at either MVP or captain? For me, I mean, if you're talking tournaments, I think it's fine. Just because, he is a red zone target and he's the number 1 tight end. If you're talking, cash formats, I wouldn't get close.
I would not do it on FanDuel because of the non-salary multiplier. Right. I don't think it's possible for him to he would have to have 3 touchdowns, honestly. And even then, it might not even be the one you need. On DraftKings, I think it's much more viable. I actually do think he's like a hair under-owned. So this game goes over or under the projected total. It is a DFS show, not a sports betting show.
I don't even know what the total is.
No, it was 48.5 earlier today because I read it off on my video.
What did you say it was?
It was 48.5 when I woke up this morning. If it moved, I have no idea. Keep your eyes peeled for a sports betting video for Thanksgiving Day between myself and Ben Razek, by the way. Final thoughts? Nope. No final thoughts. Thank you guys for joining us. We're happy to be here for Live Before Lock. Adam and I will be back for all Thursday and Monday slates, except for the Thanksgiving primetime slate, because we're not doing a 30-minute Live Before Lock on that one. We're just going to spend time with our old families. So thank you. Good luck tonight, and we will talk to you again Monday night for Live Before Lock. Don't go anywhere. Stay on this stream. Later on.
Let's do it.
Like already going.
Age before beauty. All right, here we go. Live before lock, or live before lock after live before lock. It is live before lock, brought to you by No House Advantage. Joel Pal EMac coming here with one Kyle Dvorchak as we get ready for Monday Night Football. We have Tampa Bay taking on the St. Louis Rams. Have you noticed a pattern yet with primetime games?
They hit overs? I don't know.
You'll notice that whoever was the Sunday or Monday night game often lands on that next Thursday. It's like the extra. So oftentimes we are getting within primetime slates for a week the same team twice. Yeah. And more often than not, it's every other in 2 of 3 weeks you're getting them. And you really start to notice that when you do so much other writing. It probably all blends together.
Kind of does.
Writing. It's like, okay, 2 weeks ago we had Tampa Bay going against the Saints, and we had, the Rams were against San Francisco a couple weeks ago. It's just, it's kind of fun. But we're gonna jump on in here. Thank you to Josh and Adam for getting everybody warmed up here as we get ready to go. No surprise inactives. The key piece of news that we have today is that Matt Gay will be kicking for the Rams. They had to place Kai Forbath on the injured reserve. I want to say it was an ankle injury of some sort. But that was there was a little bit of wonder today if they were going to go with Matt Gay or with guy out of the XFL. McManus,
Austin McGannis, yes, I believe.
Something around there. But he ultimately was not chosen. And it had to do with being able to practice or try out for the team, because once you're going to be on the team, you have to, wait 5 days. There's all sorts of rules. Because we're in the middle of a pandemic, so that makes sense. But here we go. A couple key things I want to point out tonight. We do have over at Awesemo_COM on Twitter. That's the Awesemo handle. We do have a free giveaway. Check out the pinned tweet and enter the Monday Night Football giveaway. 1 year of Awesemo Plus NFL. All you got to do is follow the instructions on the graphic. You got to decide if it's going to be Tom Brady or Jared Goff, who will be throwing for more yards tonight. At that point, one winner will be selected amongst those who were in the random guesses. So there you go. Easy way to get 1 year of Awesemo Premium NFL for free. We also have, promo code Mayflower in honor of the Pilgrims, Thanksgiving coming up here. If you use the promo code Mayflower on your first purchase of the 1 week NFL Express package, it is yours for $1. The only sad part, are we going to have a Thursday night primetime Turkey Day game? Got a little bit of Baltimore, little COVID bit. Action. You ready to talk Gus Edwards? Or wait, is it? Yeah, it's Gus Edwards, right?
They're number 3?
Well, number 1 in our hearts now with J.K. Dobbins and Ingram, both testing positive for COVID-19.
Ready to talk Justice Hill. It's a throwback to my 2019 best ball teams. I have no clue if he'd actually play. I don't remember what the close contact situation is, but man, my 2019 best ball teams coming back to life if Justice Hill gets on the field.
Okay, that is funny. The only funny thing I thought of is perhaps the Seahawks would be willing to loan Alex Collins, who also played for Baltimore after Seattle got him, for an 8th round pick swap just for the week. Seattle gets him back for their game in case they need him. Who says no, right? Who says no? But it's 2020. So those are the things we're looking at. So we're going to go by position here, work things down. We'll talk a little No House Advantage, talk some other stuff here. Again, nothing. We have, from a high level perspective, we have 2 pretty good defenses.
Very.
That doesn't always come to fruition, as we saw with Tampa Bay giving up 38 points to Wait, the Saints beat them. Sorry.
The Saints routed them, and it was
Right.
But it's like, I mean, we're talking about a top 5 overall. Both these teams are top 5 overall PFF defenses.
Yeah.
And like the Saints didn't care; they just buried them. So yeah,
which is just, you know, any given Sunday, and I'm wearing my football shirt here for those of you who can see this. A little warm in here. I get the sweatshirt on, but you know, we got the I forget what this guy's called, but my wife gets them every now and then because she thinks they're funny. There you go. She buys the clothes. But we've got back to the task at hand. 21.8 implied total when I took the snapshot here for the Rams. That's very, very low. The concern I have with Goff going against the number 1 passing DVOA, number 1 overall DVOA, and number 3 rushing DVOA is while he is getting yards, the touchdowns really haven't been there. Should there be some positive regression that way? Sure, but can we say that's going to happen against this particular matchup? Well, weird things happen, but it feels a little bit tough. He is 10th in the league with 272 passing yards per game, but just 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Feels a little shaky, but I don't want to go to the Rams' multi-headed backfield here. So lead us through the path with Goff here, because this feels like a Goff-Brady situation, randomly reaching into the grab bag of wide receivers that work and playing one cheap running back or tight end, and that is your main lineup. I'm not playing cash tonight because I wasn't comfortable with any of them.
Yeah, it is probably more decisions, more choices to be made on this slate than your average, and then almost all showdown slates, given that there are 3 top receivers on one team, 2 top receivers on another team, 2 tight ends on one team that you could are like splitting work, and 3 running backs on another team. So there is just an incredible amount of diversity that you can go with. And I think that's going to draw in some lowered ownership, like it's sort of decision by indecision. Yeah. Where people say, well, I'm just going to take the sure thing, but that doesn't change like the upside of, you know, any one of these guys, Cooper Kupp, Antonio Brown, pick your name. In terms of Goff, it's been really interesting. He's played better as a fantasy quarterback when his team loses, and he is also less efficient when his team loses. And all that tells me is that when his team loses, which hasn't happened a ton this year, and this is backed up by the numbers, is that he throws the ball a lot. I think that's one thing, you know, we've seen a ton of the Rams run first approach right now. They are like 24th in pass percentage or something like that. They don't really want to pass the ball too much. And when your quarterback's just Jared Goff and you have a really good defense, I get that, I guess. But they're smart enough. At least Sean McVay is smart enough to know that when he gets at a deficit, that is just running the ball isn't going to work. When the defense fails, that's when you have to let Goff loose. And it doesn't result in more efficient games. That's not the case. He's not like a good garbage time quarterback. It's simply that he's sort of like, you know, we see with like Derek Carr, in the sense of when they have a lead, they're just going to run the ball. But he's good enough that when they are at a deficit, good things can happen. So he averages more fantasy points in their losses. Obviously, it's only, I believe, a 3-game sample. It's not a ton, but he throws more touchdowns, and like it's like 0.3 more touchdowns and 20 or so more yards, maybe even 30 yards per game more in their losses. It's not great. I do think it makes like a interesting correlation where the worse his like team does in terms of the outcome, that could be interceptions, fumbles, whatever. It does create sort of maybe not like a perfectly positive correlation, but interesting correlation between him and the defense, where he's going to, or he could, it's obviously not ideal, but he could get there simply on volume and still throw 3 interceptions and get sacked a few times. So I like Goff specifically in lineups that are built on the idea that this team goes down early. It doesn't even mean they have to get absolutely blown up. Just the idea that we know this team wants to operate as a pass or as a run first team, but they're smart enough to know that they can't always do that. They recognize, you know, Sean McVay recognizes situations when that is simply not possible. So he does have, like, I would say, a fairly strong correlation with whoever you think succeeds in like a Bucs victory, especially like a clean Bucs victory. So I think in large field tournaments, I'm not even afraid to play him versus the Bucs defense, and the defenses aren't that expensive. In small field tournaments, I think the negative correlation is enough that we're more focusing on building, you know, modestly unique, but still like, you know, just solid lineups. I wouldn't go there in like 100-man or something. When you look at, you know, even the single entries get up 20,000 plus. In my single entry lineups, I don't think it's a bad idea. So Goff simply needs his team. He either needs to run hot in efficiency early, but like you said, he hasn't thrown a ton of touchdowns, or he needs to get there on yardage. We saw he threw over, I think, 61 times against the Dolphins. It was insane.
They had like 97 if that was the game, I think of 97 or 96 snaps. It was just out of control.
Yeah, it was defensive touchdowns. And I don't expect it's hard to predict defensive touchdowns, but I think that just goes to the point of when this team gets down, they're not afraid to pass the ball. So there is more of a specific scenario in which Goff does well. If his team has a lead, I'm taking swings at the running back situation. I don't know which one it's going to be, but if his team has a lead, I don't think we see a lot of Goff.
All right. And that's where we're headed next year. Let me get up here to the snap counts. I want to make sure I attribute that. So who did they play in week 8? Was that the Miami? Yeah, that was the Miami game. So Goff was in for 95 snaps. And the Rams run a lot of plays. So a lot of times we're going to hear different percentages being thrown around and different things. We try to do that to show market share of something that exists, but then you still need that other piece of data is, well, how big is the pie? Because if you have 50% of something and that something is 2, well, I'd rather have 50% of 50 and that's 25, right? So you want to think about that. But plays run started from week 1 going forward, 73, 69, 69, 57, 68, 60, 72, 95, and 70. So that game was just an incredible outlier. I mean, Malcolm Brown was in on 57 snaps. Take any outside of the first 2 weeks, take any 2 weeks and he doesn't have that in combined 2 games. It's just crazy. So you got to kind of look at all of this. And as we head into the running backs, I'm going to drop the link to my article in chat. I sort of broke this out. So I see someone, I was laughing at the EMac is the everyman. EMac was good at fantasy when nobody else was. I've survived for a long time. I don't ever redeposit. I haven't redeposited in forever, but it's because I'm a nit when it comes to choosing contests and being smart with my bankroll and taking advantage of deals. That's the key. So what you want to do on situations like this for Showdown, oh my gosh, these tournaments are so top heavy. And especially as we're heading into Thanksgiving, I'm actually playing Millie Maker for Thanksgiving, a couple of their $20 tickets because over on DK, because they're running, play 2 will give you a $10 ticket. So every day this week, they're going to give you something if you follow what they're doing. They did the same thing last week, and I got a bunch of extra tickets and different things like this. So it's worthwhile to just be smart what you're doing. Otherwise, I'm never going to play the Millie Maker because it's just too top heavy. I think it's crazy enough to play the Showdown slates, which is why I live in those contests that are 500 people or less. I love the 3-mans. I love triple ups. I love the quints. Run a bunch of quints and treat that like it's a tournament. You get 5x if you are in the top 20%. If you're in the top 20% of a normal tournament, you get half your buy-in back. You've got to finish in inside of the top 1% in most tournaments to 5x your buy-in. Wouldn't you rather do that in a quintuple up? Just throwing it out there. But let's talk here a little bit with the snaps. So week 9 was their bye. Last week we saw Brown for 41%. And the reason I was trying to I wanted these by week was because there was that huge outlier in week 8 where Malcolm Brown played 57% of the snaps. So if I try to run that in here, it's going to skew things. But Brown's basically played 41, 60 in the week we keep referring to, 40, 45 and 38 going backwards. You've got Darrell Henderson, 33, 19, 46, 53, 43. Well, what happened in that week with 19? It's when Cam Akers kind of came back into the mix. He played on 20 snaps. Henderson played on 18. Brown had the monster. Last week, Akers played on 18 snaps. Henderson was on 23. Brown came back to the pack with 29. The point I want to lay all this out in, one, I don't know for sure who is going to be the guy. I've heard theories all day, and I've come up with them because I had to write these myself as well to figure out what's going on. I ultimately decided tonight's show is tonight's slate is kind of a crazy one. I'm not playing cash, and I'm favoring Akers for the discount so I can get both quarterbacks, so I can get a quarterback and 2 or 3 of the receivers. And that's just the route I'm going. I set a rule to only play 2 of the running backs, including if they're captain. And then I went in and further said, if I'm playing any of them captain, I don't really want any of the other ones. So effectively, I'm just saying I'll play 1. I kept that other loose rule in there because Akers is cheap enough that if I get him, I'm not going to worry about it that much. Think of last night's game with Le'Veon Bell. He was cheap enough, and he ended up doing some stuff that if that happens for Akers, and he's with one of the other running backs, that's fine for me. On the Tampa Bay side, I've said if either is the captain, I don't want the other one, and I'm leaning towards Fournette. but we'll get to that. So this is, for me, is all about the passing game. Okay, think of that. If I am the everyman, then that's probably the fish take, right? What the masses are doing, where the school, being a fish doesn't mean you're foolish. It just means that's where the school of everybody's going, right? So what do we want to do in that case? We want to play the running backs. What are you going to do with this information, since you do the backwards looking data analysis of all of these different game slates, combinations, and situations? It feels like we want to avoid the running game, but what if there's a couple 1, 2, or 3 yard touchdowns because somebody gets tackled inside of the 5? That's a receiver.
It's what we talked about, exactly what we talked about with like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell last night. We're like, sure, they weren't really producing. They weren't even getting that much work, frankly. But it's just the ownership wasn't, commensurate with their odds of scoring. At least that was my opinion. And it obviously worked out. And I think to a lesser extent, we have that situation going on here. The only problem is I do think like our information going into the last night's slate was pretty clearly that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the lead back and Le'Veon Bell was a value, but a backup. Whereas it's our information doesn't give us as much of an edge on this slate, where it's less predictable without a doubt. It is difficult to say anything. My slight lean is that they most recently spent day 2 draft capital on Cam Akers. He didn't record touches in the middle of the season, even he had a few healthy games, or at least healthy. He had a few games where he was active and wasn't really getting the ball. He was coming back from a pretty brutal rib injury. It was like busted cartilage in his rib or something. It was something quite serious sounding. And now he comes back seemingly healthy. And he's got 19 or 17 or something like that touches in his past 2 games. It would tend to signal to me that they are back to trying to get him involved. And he came out to start the season and was involved. He just has this middle gap of the season where, both because of injuries and some other things, Darrell Henderson was playing well. Malcolm Brown, they use as their third down back, and he's fine in that role. I guess he's a good pass blocker or whatever. So maybe that's why he wasn't getting in. Now in the past 2 weeks, we've seen him lead the team in carries. He's not a 0 in terms of catching the ball, but I wouldn't really rely on that too much. I simply think this is a team that skews towards, generally run heavy. They can still run a lot of plays, and they're not massive underdogs. It's not like I'm thinking it's the Jets, and they really have no chance to win. They're drawing dead to win this game. The spread isn't that large. So even if they just keep it within that that range of the spread, really 1 score, I think they would be fine running the ball. It's when they get to a touchdown or greater deficit that I think they would really start to employ a pass-heavy approach. So for that reason, I think I'm fine playing Akers. He is my preferred choice. And it's sort of narrative-driven, but also we do know draft capital obviously correlates to the volume these players see. And in the past 2 weeks, it has also been Cam Akers. So in a very limited and kind of chopped up season of small samples and kind of not useless information, but information that's hard to draw much away from, I am leaning towards Akers, and also the pricing. Like you said, the pricing is really what hammers it home for me. And I think even as what I project him to be a solid enough value, I think even as a solid value, I don't think he's going to be incredibly popular because people just want the sure things. And on the Rams offense, that's 2 pass catchers. They have 2 pass catchers they use. I mean, Josh Reynolds gets in the mix, but for the most part, we can be confident it's one of these 2 guys and the quarterback. So I get why people are going to go away from it, but I am going to be going to Cam Akers. I have some, I believe I have some Brown. I don't think I have any Henderson. He kind of just falls in the middle where I don't know if he gets enough carries, out-touch Cam Akers, and I don't know if he gets enough targets. Malcolm Brown seems to be generally that guy. I know in the past 2 weeks, he has 1 fewer target than Malcolm Brown. So he kind of falls in this middle where I don't think he serves a ton of value as a pass catcher, unlike the other side where even if Fournette goes out and gets 4 carries, he get 7 targets. So I don't think Henderson has the catch upside. I don't think he has the running upside. Have a little bit of Brown, a decent amount of Akers just because of his price and the recent trend for him. It's not a great call, but I do think the upside is that he comes out and gets the majority, not all, but the majority of the carries on a team that, when they have the option, will go run first. So I like Akers. I don't feel super confident, but he's not going to be super popular. So that's why I feel okay playing him.
Yeah, so so we could have some talking points here. And the great thing about having the other guys come in on that other show is they did a nice job breaking things down. When we get to these showdown slates, it's all the strategy, the game theory, lineup construction, et cetera. And we've said it time and time again, and this is nothing new. It was new when showdown slates first came on the scene a couple years back, but we've all seen it. We've talked about it enough. You want to build for a specific story. That's how you get that leverage. We're going to see that on the Thanksgiving slate. You want to build so if something happens, then you're maximizing everything that you're doing. Last night, it certainly seemed like people just threw a bunch of stuff on the wall when the lineups won without a quarterback, including one who has basically the best passing season ever as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. But here we are. So just because you're doing that and it doesn't work doesn't mean it's wrong. And that's the thing when we're picking these arbitrary slates that are, first off, there's 3 of them. So that's 3 out of 16 that are games that are available. And it's just random because these happen to be the night games. It's very hard to infer things a lot here. But so I ran 50 lineups. I have my rule settings. Getting some people messaging me about that. So I've got 2 of the kickers and defenses as my cap. Tampa Bay running backs I mentioned. I'm only going to play them together if they're in the flex. If they're in the captain, then I'm not playing the other one. With Brady, I'm playing at least 2 of his receivers. Goff, I'm just going with 1. I may manually influence that just a little bit, but right now I feel like I'm okay with going with 1, even though everything's very consolidated there. The reason I'm doing that is with Brady, everything's sort of spread out. Brady could have, 2 touchdowns and they could very easily go to 2 different people, right? And who knows? Because he has 6 viable red zone receivers. The Rams running backs made a variety of rules there. Basically, I'm just really only going to play one of the tight ends for all the teams, and then wide receiver captains, I'm goosing and tight end captains, I'm goosing the quarterbacks by 25%. I'm not saying it's a must correlate, but I'm saying make it happen a little bit more. I don't think that's going to be an issue tonight because those are the guys that have the best point per dollar. So doing that, setting all the captains on 5%, I wanted to see what would come out with these rules. I get 6% total Rams defense, none of the Bucs. That should be no surprise. The kickers, I'm getting 25% of each. Gronkowski, 14%. That's coming in under the field. Tyler Higbee, 2%. That's well under the field. And Gerald Everett, I'm going at 20%. That's above. I capped all of the receivers at 50%. I'm getting almost all of them at 50%, but this means I'm getting no running backs. I have 1 lineup out of those 50 where a Rams running back came in. That's what's going to happen when people are doing these sorts of rules, which I think will artificially push down the running backs. So as we exit out of the running backs, any other consolidating thoughts that you would like to say? Because we went down about 4 rabbit holes there. But
yeah, I think
bringing us back.
Yeah, the last thing I think I like what you said is that, especially I would say the running backs I'm most comfortable playing together would be Brown because he's more likely to be the pass catcher. I know McVay has talked about playing him as like their 3rd down back. It's a good pass block or whatever. And for me, it's Akers. But if you go to lean for Henderson, I would go that way. I would just say that it seems like the roles of Akers and Henderson overlap to the point where I wouldn't really be playing either of those 2 at all. I don't mind going double running back. And like you said, it works because Akers is so cheap. He just projects, I think, as a decent value based on his role in the past 2 weeks. So I'm not super in love with double running back because I don't see any of them having like a smashing performance. But we saw like all it takes is one player to have a good game and Cam Akers to luck box into a touchdown. So it doesn't take a lot for any of them to hit, really. I think double running back, especially for me, it would be Akers plus Brown is like an interesting, not like incredibly perfect projection wise play, but at least in terms of large field tournaments, it could definitely hit. And I doubt people go to that kind of build.
All right, so we're going into the receivers here. Again, we'll drop a link to the article because I broke out their snaps their targets for the last few games. But I want to talk about what happened with some of the snaps. So Cooper Kupp, 7 targets in the last game. He only played on 53% of the snaps. Dealing with the sore wrist. I believe he also had hip, ankle, and knee issues. So he's dinged up. We don't know that he's not on the injury report now. He's in practice, did all that. So we don't know if that was the factor. It was just one of those things. Maybe he had an episode of something. We don't know what for sure was going on, but he only played half the snaps. We're talking about a team that basically has their top 3 wide receivers, and that is now Josh Reynolds over Vant there. But they play 80 to 90 plus % of the snaps. So Cooper Kupp 7, 21, 6, 9, 8. Those were his targets. Woods 6, 8, 5, 10, 5. And then we have Josh Reynolds 10, 9, 8, 5, 4. Those are some big numbers for Reynolds. So Reynolds, his price keeps ticking up. His play or his snap count, I think, is kind of topped out at about 80% on these, but he is getting, he was 1st or 2nd in targets in all 3 of those weeks. The only one where he didn't get it, he was 2nd with 9. Cooper Kupp had 21. So I want to say that Goff, and here's the thoughts and what I'm inferring from this. Goff is willing to take what the defenses will give him. Yes, he likes Kupp and Woods, but we've seen them work out of the slots. We've seen different shadow coverage. We've seen them roll the coverage. Reynolds had a nice matchup where they were ignoring him for San Francisco, and the Seahawks are crap on the outside for defense. So he had a nice game there, but his price has come way up. I'm still leaning towards Reynolds 1. For me, it's Woods 2, and then it's Kupp 3. Where are you going on this one?
We're going to war tonight. I have the exact opposite.
That's why I wanted to lay out my thoughts, because I think conventionally we should be looking at Cooper Kupp first. I'm not getting there though.
Oh, if you're saying conventionally we would be looking at Cooper Kupp, that makes me think that you're saying, generally people would be looking at Cooper Kupp. I should be reversing it then, because typically I'm I don't think there's a big difference between a lot of players, frankly. I don't think there's a huge difference between Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. I would generally take the lower owned one. I will say this year though, that on the whole course of the year, Cooper Kupp kind of cleanly leads the team in target share and air yard share. He's been pretty much out producing Robert Woods in terms of those.
I'm still here. Did we lose Kyle? All right. So we're going to see what we can do to get Kyle back, because I do want to hear his thoughts here on Cooper Kupp. But sort of where we're back with Kyle. Okay, perfect. Take it from the top, my friend.
So I said, I'm the opposite way. I'm going Cooper Kupp, and Jordan was like, all right, get him out of here. That's enough of that. I don't know what happened. So I it's been a slight lean, a significant lean. It's not, Devontae Adams versus versus Marquez Valdes-Scantling lean, but there has been a decent lean in terms of air yard share and target share for Cooper Kupp. And our top Showdown and single game plays tool has him as a pretty solid, a 5-ish% favorite in terms of the odds being the top scorer. And the price difference isn't egregious. It's 1,000, but it's also not going from, a Jared Goff to a Tom Brady. It's not at the very top of the range. I think you can still work within the constraints by playing. You're not, strapped for cash if you play Cooper Kupp at captain. I mean, I guess we didn't fall exactly opposite, because we both have Robert Woods in the middle. So there we go. We both have our Robert Woods. My real concern is that I would think potentially, maybe I'm not giving people enough credit. I'm trying to get as much of my action in at very low stakes, just because I'm trying to find the softest opponents I can find, is that I hope people are box score chasing on Josh Reynolds. And to be fair, his volume is good too, which has kind of been the thing that I think a lot of times we're well, if you're just looking to box score, you're going to overrate him. But his volume has been good. Like you said, he's been 1 or 2 in targets on the team. And that's really what we should be looking at. My bigger lean is that I pull back on our priors. And before this season, he was averaging less than 2 catches per game in 2 consecutive seasons. So it's I don't trust this small sample of recent really good and volume laden. It's not like he just broke off one of his 2 targets for a long catch. Like you said, top 2 and targets on the team in the past few weeks. I'm just simply relying on our priors throughout the season and dating back to previous seasons of Josh Reynolds. And I'm not buying this. And the only other reason I would add to that is his price. As you said, is climbing. I get it though. Josh Reynolds has it's not just variance, at least in terms of the volume, would say he's also deserves to be producing well. He deserves to have his price hiked. I'm just concerned with, does that come back down to earth? Maybe it was the Cooper Kupp wrist injury. Like you said, he popped up in the injury report with that a few times, or, a litany of injuries. Maybe he just is taking over as a guy who can mix in every single week. And if that's the case, I probably kind of get dunked on this because I don't have much Reynolds.
Yeah, and that was worth, I think, spending some time on, just talking about Reynolds, because he seemed like a great play and he did well, but he was half the price of what he was his last 2 Showdown slates against Seattle and against San Francisco. So now it's not quite the good deal that it is, but we're sort of starved for value, because we're looking at running backs by committee, tight ends by committee, and seemingly very large wide receiver cores. So we want to just give everything its due and proper. Tight end real quick. So Tyler Higbee plays about 25% more snaps than Gerald Everett. They're similarly targeted on the season. It is 31-30 in favor of Higbee. He did miss week 7. Over the last 4 games, including the one where Higbee was missing, Everett had 21 targets. He had 3 in the one, probably 5 in the one where Higbee was out. Higbee had 14 in his 3. So point being, they're still kind of evenly targeted throughout that. And then it was Johnny Munt that saw 3 targets in that game that Higbee was out. He has 4 total on the year. I've seen some people asking about him as a punt. well, what did we see? Like 17 different receivers had caught a ball by the third quarter in last night's game, or 17 different baskets. Weirdness can happen. You can kind of go back and look, and most of them all had one catch. So, yeah, I guess I'm not really interested in any of these guys. If I had to choose one, it would be Gerald Everett. And I was fortunate enough to ride the Higbee train at the end of last year and into the playoffs. I'm leaning towards Everett still.
Yeah, take those winnings off the table with Higbee. He's just been like completely a committee tight end. Like his targets and like routes and all that is not too dissimilar from Everett. I agree. He's the punt play. I mean, this is kind of an interesting slate. There are like, I don't think any viable punt plays below like 1,000. All of the reasonable punt plays aren't just like, a number 3 receiver because of injuries or COVID, whatever, who is just like the smash points per dollar play. It's guys you actually have to think like, well, 2,000 is actually like Cameron Brate's kind of a good example. Gets 3 targets and technically gets a start last week, but I think it's 2,200. 3 targets. Is that what you want at 2,200? Gerald Everett coming in just under 3K, like half of the tight end role. Is that what you want? So it's an interesting slate. And I think I'd rather just try and find the optimal mix of the mid-price guys. Like, I think getting up to the defense, I kind of like defense. I think it's something that kind of Alex preaches on our Thursday night shows, is typically that just like people underrate the upside of defense. Certainly, I don't think they underrate the median projection, because on a slate where you have, like, this slate is perfect. You have so many good players, and most slates have good players. And even if they don't, when you adjust for the players around them, there are some good players. Most slates, because that is the case, because I can play Antonio Brown, I can play Leonard Fournette, I can play Ronald Jones. Why would I be playing a defense? Well, I don't know. Maybe Goff is bad this week because he's bad like every 4th week or something. And in that case, I probably get a really good game, especially because they throw more. Like, there can be a snowballing effect if he doesn't play well, but they have to keep throwing, and we know they're willing to do that. So I'd rather look for like the 2,000 plus range and try to find the optimal mix of mid-priced and high-priced, obviously, guys, but just not going too deep. This is just not a slate for me that I'm really comfortable punting. I'd rather mix it around, still leave salary on the table. I think that's fine. I just don't think we see enough volume going to anyone below 1,000. Like, how do they have a ton of like active players below 1,000? So I think Gerald Everett is kind of the bottom of the barrel. I guess Cameron Brate's a little bit cheaper, so maybe he's a guy you could argue. But outside of that, yeah, I think I agree. The punt plays are, yeesh, good luck. Good luck.
Very thin, very thin. All right, so we are sponsored by No House Advantage. Let's talk about them for a moment. If you have not heard of them, it's nohouseadvantage.com. Prop wagering with a fantasy twist. And why? We're playing against each other. We're not playing against the house. Therefore, there is no house advantage, hence the name. Sign up with the promo code Awesemo, get a deposit match up to $20 with your first deposit, and refer a friend, you'll get 5. We also have free projections for their sites. Let's talk about a couple of tonight's questions. We have Jared Goff over there coming in at 260 passing yard, 260 with the hook passing yards. Would you like to go over or under? Now, what we were going to do, if you were playing on No House Advantage, you pick 5 of, let's see, tonight looks like there are about 25 or so questions. You'll pick 5 of them, over or under the different props, and then you will put a confidence rating on them, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then if you are correct, you get the points. That's what's scored against the other players in the contest. Definitely want to check that out. Jared Goff, over or under 260 and a half?
I'm going to go over.
You go over. Okay.
Yeah. What's his average right now?
He's averaging, what did I say? I think earlier, 79 per game or something like that. We have been projected for 282. So that is a value of 3% in favor of it going over. Not 3% out of 100. That's your value yield on that. It's a more complex formula, but all you need to do is look on the projections here, and the far right column, it tells you pick the over or the under. But when you talk about the percentage difference and the absolute value, that's where you're getting you're better. The bigger the number, the better it is for you. Antonio Brown, 4.5 receptions.
So I think I saw both his receiving and receptions prop. I like the receiving under. I still go slight under on this receptions. They're just like such a hack thing to say. There are a lot of mouths to feed, and I hate saying it. I'd like to at least phrase it as it's difficult to post a high target share because one, it's not cliche, and two, it makes me sound smart, I think, because market share, target share, those things sound smart. But like we have a very strong history on Mike Evans and a pretty strong recent history of 2 to 3 years on Chris Godwin that say these guys just command targets. And we have a less strong history, at least in like the past year and a half, because we have 3 games on Antonio Brown in the last year and a half. He has less time with the offense. I still think like he's a very interesting play. I think his range of outcomes just skews more as like field stretcher, like high efficiency. He could even like get over his receiving prop and still stay under the receptions prop just because there are so many good plays. And he can be used in a way that is not conducive to catching a lot of balls and still have a good night. So I'll lean the under here. I don't feel great about it. But there's a lot of guys there, man. There's a lot of really talented receivers. I think if you're just like looking at the median projection, it's going to be difficult to find the necessary volume to bet overs on like Tampa Bay receivers, especially in terms of catches. They can all be efficient. It wouldn't surprise, like they should be efficient. They have a great quarterback and they're probably difficult to cover when you have 3 awesome guys. But, I guess I've kind of dovetailed this into my conversation about these guys. But yeah, it's going to be difficult for Brown to hit that over. I'm sure he can, and I'm sure I'll look stupid. But for now, I guess I go the under.
All right. Oh, so many jokes there, but I'm just going to let those go. We've got, but you're wondering, what did I say? I'm sure I'll look stupid there. With that man bun, I'll say you will. Oh, that's hair game jealousy. Notice the receding hairline. Wave goodbye to a few brave soldiers every morning in the shower. Enjoy it while you can. All right. That brings us into, you said Tampa has a great quarterback. Some would say it's a terrific quarterback. That is Tom terrific. He is going against the Rams, who have allowed 1 or less touchdowns in 7 of their 9 games. Josh Allen is the only quarterback to have exceeded 270 passing yards against them. This Rams defense, nothing to be trifled with there. That was back in week 3. He also had 4 of the 8 passing touchdowns allowed by the Rams this season. They have the 9th best DVOA and the 9th overall. 9th best passing DVOA, 9th overall. Brady has multiple touchdowns in 7 of 9 games, including 3 rushing touchdowns, all from short yardage. Of course, he is 42 years old, but are they going to be able to contain Tom Terrific? What do you want to do here? Is he the captain? Is it Goodwin? Is it Fournette? Those are the questions that keep coming up in chat. Yes, chat, I am reading you.
I try and jump in chat, or at least read it. I haven't jumped in yet, I don't think. But I think he's clearly the optimal like captain in terms of low stakes cash. And on FanDuel, same situation where quarterbacks even get like a bit of more advantage just because we don't get like, receptions and stuff. So, and they have just better chance, or, compared to all players, they have a really good chance of scoring touchdowns. It's hard for them to not score the touchdowns in their team unless they're rushing. So he's clearly the best, like low stakes, low entry, like total entries play. It's simply that I think any of these guys has a lot of potential, and predicting it is going to be wildly difficult. That's why, like in the more recent slates, I've been playing a little bit of like just the large field single entry 3 max. I actually played like just more lineups in general tonight, just because I want to get exposure to a lot of the non-quarterbacks in this slate. Because on one side, we have actually like concentration normally, although Josh Reynolds is kind of messing this up for me, normally have concentration between 2 players. On this side, I think there like is a very real chance to have very spiky efficiency from any one of these guys, just because they're so talented. They have a history of efficiency, and any of them can probably draw a lot of targets. I don't know if it's, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett-esque, but this offense is quite good too. So I think the receivers are probably my preferred play in large field tournaments. And that typically ends up being the case anyway, simply because, especially when you look at someone like Brady, he does have some like QB sneak equity. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I think he has 3 touchdowns on the year, if I'm correct.
Yep, 3.
If he sneaks one in, I will be very disappointed, because that puts him at a really strong advantage to be the optimal captain because of the way he can spread the ball out. If he doesn't, I feel good, not great, about the idea that if he's going to have a good game, one of his receivers, if not multiple of them, are probably going to have really good games at cheaper costs, adjusting for the fact that the receptions obviously matter more they don't matter at all for Tom Brady. They only matter for his receivers. I'm going to be over the field on all of his receivers and under the field on him. And that's not because I don't think he's really good. I'm almost completely locking him in the flex. It's just that's where I'm choosing to play him.
Yep. And that's a valuable thing to think about, everybody, is by, quote, fading someone on Showdown doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to play them. You either come in under the field or you put them at flex if they're going to be the number 1 captain, and then you just hope your decisions get you more points. So there guys like Tom Brady on projecting out like this, Goff to a lesser extent, they are going to be the most best projected plays for good reason. Will they get there? We won't know that just yet. We almost have 1,700 people watching. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. 2 requests. One, if you could hit that like button, we would love to get up to 600. And then secondly, we would like to see you subscribe, because that is very important for us. We're trying to get to 50,000 on our way by Christmas. So thank you for getting us to almost 42,000 after today. We appreciate it. Running backs here. So my notes say, just when I thought Leonard Fournette was going to be the lead back, Ronald Jones had a 98-yard touchdown run. He had a fumble early in the last game. Still got to carry, most of the carries. However, that was it was just a game script. They didn't need Fournette. I am leaning towards Fournette, especially on DraftKings. He is half the price of Jones. 8,800 in the flex for Jones, 4,400 for Fournette, full PPR there. Over on FanDuel, proportionally, it's closer. It's $3,500 gap, but I'm still there. I would be leaning a little bit more towards Ronald Jones, because touchdowns are weighted heavier there.
Yep.
And that's the way you want to play that. And overall, quarterbacks are the most advantageous scorers on FanDuel, based on their volume of yardage and then their touchdown equity. What do you want to do with these running backs? Again, if I got either a captain, I'm not playing the other. I'll play both at flex, but I don't think I'm getting very much of both.
Yeah, unlike the running backs on the other side, the prices do make it difficult, certainly not impossible. Like we've talked about, anything can happen on a single individual game. Like we think about, like, all the times great players go off and we don't remember these random no-name players because, like, they're no-name players. I'm not saying either of these guys are, but just more to the point that, like, median projections just are what they are. They encapsulate what happens most often, not what is going to happen. And most importantly, not what is going to happen, like, versus, the field, basically what the field thinks is going to happen. So I like both of these running backs. That hardly even applies to what I'm about to say. It's just that I think we tend to overweight what we think will happen versus what the field thinks. That's really the strategy of it. And even more in Showdown, what the field thinks and how, like, specific lineups, like which lineups are going to be duped. So I don't hate going double running back. I think on this team, though, the prices do make it difficult for both of them to pay off. I think it kind of just depends on the game script you're playing for. If you think, like, Tampa Bay covers, not even if you think they cover, if you just build a lineup that is based on the fact that they cover, you don't have to really, like, be going out and, like, placing big bets at DK Sportsbook or whatever. Simply that if they cover, I think we see a lot of Ronald Jones like we saw last week. And it's actually insane that he fumbled on, like, the first drive or whatever and was not benched, because he has a big old history of missing, like, blitz pickups and fumbling or dropping and getting benched immediately. And Bruce Arians stuck with him, which is interesting. And, like, I know fumble rates, like, I don't really buy too much into fumble rates. It just takes a long time for something like that to stabilize. So as long as he doesn't come out and fumble, he's been incredibly explosive this year, has now 4 games, I believe, over 100 yards. And we really haven't seen a ton of Leonard Fournette as a, like, running back. We've seen a lot of him as a pass catcher, and he's certainly the better value, just coming in so cheap relative to getting, I don't know, 5 to 10 carries and 5 to 10 targets. He has, like, some 7, 8 target games mixed in there. So I think he's the better value. I like both of these guys. I think it's kind of the theme of my slate is I'm mixing in a lot of the skill players and really fading quarterback hard at captain, hoping it doesn't bite me, because I think, one, these receivers can have, like, spiky efficiency. We've seen Tom Brady going deep at a much higher rate. That's good for his, like, the upside of his receivers. And playing both quarterbacks, a lot of Brady, some Goff in the flex. I also think Ronald Jones, especially on, like you said, on FanDuel, Ronald Jones is a really strong play. If he goes out 20, 100 and a touchdown, there's a strong candidate to be the top, like, MVP play. So I really like Jones on FanDuel specifically. On DraftKings, the pricing makes it a bit more difficult to get up to him given your alternatives and given that, the scoring isn't so much skewed towards running backs like it is on FanDuel. I like Jones. I'm over the field on him at captain, because I think that same kind of stat line, like I said, 100 and a touchdown, can still happen for him. It's just on FanDuel, I think he's a really good play. On DraftKings, I actually have more Leonard Fournette in the flex just because he lets you do other things. I'm still over the field on probably both of them, though. I just think the skill players in this game are going to be underrated. Probably a captain. For me, Fournette, I just think is a good value. He lets you do other things. He's a decent, okay correlation play with Tom Brady, simply because he gets there as a pass catcher. Now, does he get there mostly on receptions? Does he need a touchdown to get there, especially through the air? No, so I wouldn't be saying, like, if you play Brady, you must play Fournette or vice versa. But there is a small amount of correlation there, whereas I think Ronald Jones and Tom Brady almost have to be negatively correlated. We see essentially very little work for Ronald Jones as a pass catcher. When he does get work as a pass catcher, he's got like just 2 oven mitts on and can't catch, anything. My God, so I think Ronald Jones is a pretty strong correlation with his defense, maybe with the opposing offense in that you would get at least the opposing passing attack. So I think these running backs, more than saying like, I love Ronald Jones tonight, the matchup, there's a left guard, right tackle matchup or something. I don't really care too much about like the offense defensive line matchup. It's more that I think they both play well in very specific game scripts. So you can not lock in, but you can say that like, I know when I'm playing Ronald Jones, X is more likely to happen. For me, it's like the passing game on the other side is probably more likely just to get extra volume. And I like having that increased correlation. It just makes me more likely to get the rest of my lineup right if, say, I am playing Ronald Jones and captain.
All right, we're gonna skip wide receiver, but we'll come back to it.
I hit on that with the
we
betting
hit
stuff.
on it pretty good, but we're getting more and more eyeballs here, so we want to keep an eye on that. But circle back for them. But tight end, so Gronkowski on the field, 81% of the snaps last week, saw just 3 targets. He did catch 2, 51 yards, and his 4th touchdown in 5 games. Cameron Brate also got 3 targets, caught all 3 of his, 31 yards, and a touchdown of his own. However, in the last 5 games, Brate has 7 total targets. Got 3 of them last week. So I do not think that was a trend. I think that was an aberration. The Rams defense, let's see, or for Tampa Bay, Rams against the defense. The Rams have allowed more than 2 sacks twice, I believe, on the season. They have 13 allowed for the entire year, which is 5th. Fewest in the league. They have just 13 turnovers. However, Tampa Bay second in takeaways and second in sacks. What happens there? I think Tampa Bay wins out, but it's not a gimme. But you could see St. Louis. I'm sorry. You could see Los Angeles coming back. I was so proud of myself. I didn't write it once, and here I am saying it instead, which has never really been an issue, but there we are. You've got, can you see Goff getting sacked on back-to-back plays in desperation time in the 4th quarter? Yes. That's when surprisingly a fair number of sacks happen, is when the teams are like, screw it, we got to throw. The quarterback holds the ball on too long. They're down 2-3 scores, and then they just get sacked, and then it's 3rd and 17, and it's a mess. So that's where I think the sacks happen. We shall see. What do you want to do? Clean up tight end, defense, and then let's talk about Godwin and Brown as captains.
Yeah. So at tight end, I'm maybe a tiny bit more on Cameron Brate, if only because last week, and it's so hard to draw from such a small sample, but last week they actually ran a little bit of 2 tight end. It was like 27% 2 tight end, and I think that's why we saw, obviously it's why we saw so much Brate. They put 2 tight ends on the field. So yeah, that's why we saw it. Does that repeat going forward? It's hard to say. I think maybe the more interesting point to take away is not that I love Brate, it's that I think if they're much more likely to run 2 tight end sets than they are to run 4 wide receiver sets. And the more that Antonio Brown plays on this team, the more likely he is to just be like Josh Reynolds is essentially like almost an every down tight end, because they play a ton of 3 wide and they do not use Van Jefferson. Antonio Brown is kind of likely to fill almost a similar role, especially with the way Josh Reynolds has played as of late. I don't think we really see much Scotty Miller, and I like Scotty Miller, but they're both they have 3 receivers who really should not come off the field for him unless they need a rest. And then they run a little bit of 2 tight ends. So Scotty Miller, I don't know if I like any of them tonight. I'd rather play Cameron Brate. I don't love either of them. In terms of defenses, I'm kind of going, not completely, but I'm going a little bit captain or bust with them. And that's kind of the range of outcomes, is if they have a good game, the goods are really good. And their floor is also doing absolutely nothing, which is probably not the case for like a running back, especially a running back who can catch passes. So I have a little bit over the field. Like, we're not seeing a lot of love for the defenses tonight at captain. And this is, it's like something Alex has talked about. There's a sneaky ceiling for these teams, especially when they have a decent matchup. I think the matchup versus Goff always has a decent amount of upside. Like, anytime you tell me a team like has recently attempted 60 passes, obviously that came on a great defensive performance on the other side, and that's kind of what you need to happen. But there's like a snowballing upside that can happen. If Goff doesn't play well, it doesn't mean he doesn't get to throw anymore as long as his team is losing. So Bucs defense for me, I kind of like both defenses. Brady like throwing a little bit more interceptions than usual, probably because he's like playing more aggressive than usual. So good for him. Both defenses in play, obviously, given that neither are like crazy expensive. I'm just going to take the home favored defense here, and the defense with the matchup versus not the greatest quarterback of all time.
All right. I'm not playing cash, but here's my main lineup. I'm going to make sure that's in the handful of triple ups I did enter and in a couple 3-mans. But so I'm going Brady and Goff, Brown and Godwin, Akers and Fournette. It works out. Akers is kind of my Byron Pringle punt.
You got there with Byron Pringle too, I assume.
Pringle and Le'Veon Bell both hooked me up. I was until that last touchdown, I was losing 35%. That last touchdown there, because I was so heavy on Mahomes and captain and Tyreek Hill, I ended up losing 1%. It's like you never know with these showdown things. It's crazy. But I'm accepting that Akers is a punt play. I'm hoping for 3 to 5 looks today. I'll be happy with more. With Fournette, I'm hoping for 6 to 8. And then I'd like to be a week early on Antonio Brown. I have stronger feelings for him as a play. I caught myself there. Stronger feelings. Jordan's laughing. I think he's going to be a decent play at some point. This is our chance to get it on a main slate. So we definitely want to go after that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to upload my lineups because I've already made them all, a new record. What would you like to hit on from the 2 4s, 4 2s consideration?
Yeah, I think this is like the last slate was much more skewed towards me wanting to like jam in a lot of the Chiefs. I think this is maybe a more balanced approach. I think I'm generally often going to skew towards 2 4s, and like Cooper Kupp is kind of the perfect example of this. We saw it was versus the Miami game, 21 targets. That is insane. I'm positive that is the highest we've seen this year, and it's the highest we've seen like a year or two as well. Obviously, that came in 95th, 98th, 99th percentile outcome in terms of just the overall volume any single player will see. They attempted 60 passes. They had multiple defensive touchdowns scored against them. I don't think that is the case, but I do think something like that, let's call it 14, 15 targets, is the upside. And that obviously happens almost certainly when his team is losing. So I think I'm choosing him over Woods, but you can certainly field a very similar argument for Woods. I think Kupp would probably be the player I'm typically just looking for, like the number one receiver on the underdog or the team that I think could be losing. For me, it's Kupp and some 2 4s. I'm going more balanced this slate than I did the last one, but like the last one was the Chiefs. Obviously, I want to get more Chiefs in. So a little more balanced on this one. I think maybe one of the only other interesting things would be playing like defense, running back, and 1 receiver as your 3 from the team that you expect to win. Because if Ronald Jones scores twice and Brady only scores once, that receiver is getting there and probably not Brady. And the defense could score as well or just have a good game, if it's a low scoring game. So I think if I'm going to 3-3, which I am, and 4-2, it's more about building unique versions of those. I'm not just like, I'm going to play 4 good Bucs and 2 good Rams, you and everybody else, buddy. So trying to maybe build a little bit more vanilla this slate in terms of I'm not building a ton of, 5-1 as much at least, but I'm just going to get weirder with the rest of the stuff I'm doing.
Yeah, and I've caught a little bit of the show before us with Josh and Adam, and they have a different take on they don't focus as much on 5-2, 4-2, etc. And I think what I wanted to clarify when we're saying that, we're not saying force it in. Those guys could do a little bit different process than what we do. They build a lot of lineups, call them out. They weight them based upon their ability to be unique with the lineups, where the popularity is going, the leverage they're getting off different people. So they're adding in a whole bunch of different influences where Kyle and I perhaps aren't. We might, lovingly, while we're not quite hand building it, we're influencing our player pool. By influencing your player pool, setting entry caps, building in the rules, you may need to goose it a little bit to say, I only want 2 Rams in these builds, and now I'm locking in, Kupp, or I'm locking in whatever. And then you can flip it the other way and say, now I'm locking in Brady, but I'm only doing this, but I'm only going to have 2 Bucs. That's how I approach the 4-2s, 5-1s, etc. So I don't build all my lineups that way. I just build for a couple certain scripts that way based upon what my rules are doing, just to make sure I get those combinations. Because by the time you set up the uniques and the randomness and all of that, you can end up with crappy lineups and not even realize it from that standpoint. All right, so got a couple moments here for questions. Reminder, No House Advantage is the sponsor here. You can go download them in the App Store for their to access it on your mobile devices, or you can go to the website, nohouseadvantage.com. When you sign up, use the promo code Awesemo. When you make your first deposit, get a $20 deposit match or up to $20 deposit match from them. Refer a friend, get another $5 from them. Who doesn't want $25? Best team captain and why? This is a good one, and I think the answer is not Tom Brady. If you're playing,
no, I think in large field tournaments, it's not. I just can't stomach the idea of playing mostly a non-rushing quarterback. Obviously, he has the really good at sneaking in from the one, and I guess even he has like a 2-yard run as well. He has that upside, but outside of that, if he has a receiver who he propels to a good game, it's going to be difficult for him to beat out that receiver. So for me, I'm going to go with Chris Godwin. I think early in the season, we saw Chris Godwin just dominating Mike Evans in terms of targets. Anytime Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were on the field together, it was the Chris Godwin show. Like for a while, it was like through like 8 or so weeks, and it was a truncated sample, but it was like 2 or 3 targets per game for Mike Evans. I think that certainly skews towards a bit of a favorable light on Chris Godwin, but I do believe in that a little bit more. And we saw it last year as well. I think before they got injured, Chris Godwin was on pace to slightly have the advantage in terms of just overall fantasy points. So I think for me, it's Chris Godwin. I'm focusing mostly on skill players, but Chris Godwin is the player that I'm most over the field on just in terms of raw percentage at captain.
Yep. So I ended up with 5% Brady at captain. We're projecting almost 25%. I do have 75% of him in the flex. We're projecting about 50% there. Goff is my number 2 or my number 1 at 14%. Godwin at 11. And then I've got Kupp, Robert Woods, Evans, Antonio Brown all at 9. So I'm hoping that somebody gets a 2-touchdown night, and then I rise to the top of the smaller tournaments I'm in and get, the 20x or higher that I'm looking for. So that is kind of wrapping us up. 2 minutes here until kickoff. Oh, promo code Mayflower. You'll want to jump in on that. $1 for the Awesemo NFL Express package for 1 week. That offer is good through Thanksgiving. Get it? Mayflower, Pilgrims, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving football. Oh my gosh. We're going to have all sorts of content for you guys for football, Thanksgiving football. Fingers crossed that the Baltimore Pittsburgh game would just false positives, right? That's all we want. We already know a couple of running backs are out. It's funny how these things happen after Sunday. Adam Thielen, if you only would have been out yesterday and not played, I would have done so much better. But check that out. I will be, for Melissa, I know you're watching, I will be posting head-to-heads for that Thursday night game if it does happen, because we're doing a show for it. And I will be playing for cash there because I know it's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. And I want to have something while I'm on my 2nd or 3rd helping of leftovers.
Yeah, that's man. If I hope we get that game. Should be a good one, especially if things get weird with certain players getting rolled out.
Yeah, otherwise I'm gonna have to go to bed early. Well, I have to work on Friday, so it's not like I'm gonna be doing anything too crazy on Thursday night. But there we are. All right, we have taken you up to lock here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Did we get up? Yes, we did get up to 500 likes. Much appreciated. We're starting it all over again tomorrow, already in the can. You can get the weekend review show that was with Laffy, Adam, and Josh. I usually like to listen to that and catch up, get some a little tidbit here and there with regards to how to build lineups and how things worked out and their various approaches. On Tuesday here, we are going at 11 o'clock. We have the Thanksgiving First Look strategy show. That's going to be Laffy, Sal, and Ben. Wednesday, we're going to get Thanksgiving-centric show. It's going to be Matt, Kyle, and Laffy, and then a special MMA show there from Pete the Heat Rogers and Jason Floyd. And then Thursday, we're getting you 2 hours up to the original, the first kickoff, and then you're going to get live before lock for the primetime slate. So there we go. All right, gamers. With that, time for pizza. You can follow Kyle over there on Twitter at Kyle Tweets Here. I am at EMac DFS, and it is Awesemo _COM. Good luck, gamers.